Hey guys, lurking here from Mobalytics. I'm going to try and go through this as fast as possible. This is the Vessel of Hatred Sorcerer changes going into the PTR that we know for now. I'm going to go over the winners, the losers, the biggest things, and what I think the meta is going to look like next season in regards to enchantments, Paragon boards, and the works. Some people are shitting on Familiar. I think it's awesome. I think it was probably the best out of the additions to all the classes with skill they got. So it's got 3 charges. It's a Conjuration skill. It's got a 12-second cooldown. And basically, when you cast it, it'll spawn a Familiar that's the same element of the skill that you last cast. There are Fire, Cold, and Lightning Familiars. The biggest takeaway here is that the Fire Familiar can apply Burning for Devouring Blaze. Um, and Flame Feeder Glyph, etc., and burning damage reduction. And so this is your familiar. 3 charges, 12-second cooldown. It goes into enhanced. Um, and this allows you to apply the chill, stun, or burning, and then you pick one of these 2 nodes. Invoked is 10% increased damage. So you have an ice familiar out, and you're casting frozen orb. It's 10% damage. But what I'm really after is the summon familiar. I think this is going to be the go-to node. You get 3% DR, fine and dandy, but the biggest thing is the familiar is no longer tied to your previous casted skill. Instead, it rotates between fire, cold, and lightning. And the biggest thing here is that you can have 6 familiars out. If you use the enchantment, every time you cast Ice Blades or Lightning Spear or Hydra, you're gonna spawn a familiar. So this season it was Firebolt, Ice Blade enchant. I think next season in season 6 Vessel of Hatred, it's going to be Ice Blade and Familiar enchantment, and then you probably won't even need Familiar on the bar. You can just keep casting your Ice Blades and your Lightning Spear off the bar, and it's going to make Familiars, and hopefully you can get 6 out, and then it's going to rotate elements, and it's going to apply burning for you. And let's watch a little bit of gameplay.
Let's take a look at this in action. All right, so initially we cast a Frost Familiar here, right? It's jumping around and it's landing, it's dealing frost damage. Then we cast a Fire skill. Now we get a Fire Familiar jumping around and kind of dive bombing on enemies. And then finally we get a Shock Familiar, a Lightning Familiar here that's going to deal lightning damage. So you can kind of mix and match these depending on what skills you use, what combination you cast them in, and it's really flexible. It fits into a lot of different builds. Even if you're just a pure, say, fire sword, and you just want to do fire damage, you just want to do burning, this could still fit because you're just going to be able to summon the fire familiar.
All right, I digress. Let's get straight into it. So let's do our slideshow. So Vessel of Hatred, Sorc changes. Hell yeah, brother. Moral of the story is you are going to be in pit jail for season 6 to level your glyphs and basically progress through the new world tiers, which are essentially these torment tiers. More on that later. News at 11. We are now getting plus 10 skill points because the levels have changed from 1 to 100 to 1 to 60. So we get an additional 10 from 50 to 60. There's Paragon changes. You're not going to be limited to 5 boards. Everybody got a new board. It looks awesome. And now you're going to get an additional 100 Paragon points. So they said 200 to 300, but we get 225 right now. So I'm thinking 325 Paragon points to distribute between 5 boards. Going to get a lot of quality of life we're going to be able to take. As I said, the leveling changes. I'll get more into that and our new skill, the familiar. All right, so I'm gonna go over my tier list. I think it looks similar to, this is the PTR tier list. Lightning Spear did get knocked down a peg. I don't think it's no longer an S plus tier. I think Frozen Orb is going to be better all around. It's to be determined whether Spear is still going to be a lot better than in Pit. It might be, but who gives a shit? Frozen Orb's just going to be your all around Giga Blaster, as it wasn't. There was a nerf to the amount of conjurations you can get out. It's only 30 now. I think there wasn't a nerf to the amount of conjurations you can get out. I think there was a nerf to the amount of conj mastery stacks you can get out. So you can still get a ton of lightning spears out. And you can still get, Frozen Orb gets 37 conjurations out or so, but you're only going to get 30 conj mastery stacks worth of damage. Rearing up the pack in A tier, I believe, is Blizzard, Ball Lightning, and Chain Lightning. They're pretty strong this season, all pushing around 136 to tier 140. And then you do have your Firebolt shenanigans with Greater Fireball and the Shatter. I'm not too into it. I'm gonna be honest. I think it's a bit of a meme, but it's creative. And then I think Pure Fireball is gonna rear itself into A tier. We'll see. It may be B plus. It got some love. I'll get into that. Charge Bolt's got some love as well. I think it's going to be pretty good, solid B tier. Maybe make its way into A. I think Hydra's still going to be really strong, especially with Familiar. Meteor got some nice tempers. It's going to have some good synergy with some of the runes, some meteorites. Arclash is just Arclash doing Arclash shit. Ice Shard still needs some love. It needs a unique to really push it over the edge. Teleport, those meme teleport builds. I don't know. I'm not too sold on them. You can get some meme damage out of them. They're kind of cheeky, but this Ace of Doors sort of falls into this as well. And then Incinerate still is just not that good. We'll see. We'll see. It's just the fact that it doesn't scale with attack speed and you have to stand still. So leveling is now 1 to 60. Basically, you start with normal and hard unlocked. You get expert after you complete the prologue, and then penitent once you hit level 50. This seems to be like the new world tier 4 is penitent. The enemies are like 45 levels above you, something like that. These is just sort of like world tier 3, 1, 2, but then we work into torment levels, and they're all locked to what tier pit you can complete. There's going to be 100 tiers of pit now instead of 200. 100 is like the new 100 is like the old 200 basically. So you do a 20, you get Torment 1, a 35, you get Torment 2, 50, 3, 65, you get Torment 4, and you can switch freely between all the Torments. And what's cool about Torment is instead of like tier 7, tier 8 Infernal Hordes, it's just going to now all scale to your Torment level that you're doing, and they're going to be relative to they're going to be in equal difficulty. I think all the content in this game is going to be equal in difficulty level to the pit level that you were doing, because pit is a really good benchmark, as much as we hate it. Torment scales all content, so like the Uber bosses now are just going to cost the same amount of material regardless of what torment you're in. The drops are going to increase, the amount of uniques, mythics, etc., etc. Hell tides and then like horde levels will scale. And Juno, I'm going to need you to lay down, baby. So nightmare dungeons are now going to be, instead of leveling glyphs, they're going to how you get some of your masterwork materials, so you can start to progress through the torment levels. That's awesome, because you can just, even if you get a bad nightmare dungeon, you can just kill all the enemies and they all drop Neath Iron, etc., or Obusite, whatever. And then pit is how it's going to be how you level your glyphs. Your glyphs now go from level 1 to 50. At level 15, they get the radius increase they have now, and then at level 46, they get an additional radius increase. As you can see from this level 50 glyph, it's got 42.8 crit strike damage, a 15% damage multi, and a 21.6% damage multi. The Paragon boards they're getting reduced down to 5 glyphs, which I think is really good for build crafting, because instead of this 8 glyph rush now, but look at this 21.6, 15, and then a huge chunk of additive. These are worth like 4 or 5 glyphs themselves. So there is going to be a number crunch. Probably, they're probably going to affect the base skill percentages chopped down a little bit, maybe some decimal places, but overall, these are really strong. We're going to get a lot more damage. I think we're going to be way stronger than we ever were. I'll touch on the PTR real quick. It's coming on September 4th, which is next Wednesday. It's running to the 11th for a week. The first 3 days, you will not have any of these boosts unlocked, but because they want you to experience the new leveling mechanics, but then you're going to basically be able to get everything, max all aspects, glyphs, generate uniques, grant all the new runes. Yeah, it's going to be great. All right, so the Paragon updates, they go to 100 now. As I talked about the rank increase, you're going to get an additional multiplicative stat. Moving away from the Nightmare Dungeons. Nightmare Dungeons are now like NM and chill, just kind of relaxing, cruise through, get some upgrade materials, and then it's like a temp base. You get like 3 attempts to upgrade your thing, and then if the pit level, say your glyph is level 50, you're doing a pit 60, it will always upgrade. And then bonus ranks if it's even higher. We have a new Paragon board, fundamental release. It comes with this really awesome legendary node that's basically a 30% damage multi for each fire, lightning, and cold attack. If we apply them all, lay down, Juno, lay down. I can't see the screen. The Paragon board looks really good. It's got really good rare nodes, vuln damage, non-fizz, DR burning, DR vuln. It just looks like this is going to be on every single Paragon. You're going to have to take this. And the glyph The legendary node itself looks like it's in a decently centralized spot, so it's not too off to the corner. Quite huge pathing, but we have a lot of flex points to play with now, so boards are going to be fun. They're not going to be as tight and bare bones as they are. You know, you're gonna play around, be able to grab some DR burning, some max life. So I think we're gonna get 325 points now. They said we're getting an additional 100 from 200 to 300 plus that 25 base that we start with. So it's gonna be starter and then frigid fate because it's got a 1.6x multi. And then I think every board's going to have to take fundamental release. It's got a 1.3x global damage multi, and then it's going to flex your fourth and fifth board. Burning builds and even some builds with firebolt enchantment, they're going to want the burning DR and the elite DR from Burning Instinct, and it's got a lot of dexterity on it. Be a great board for destruction. Searing Heat's going to be mandatory in direct damage fire builds. There's a play on it too because it has DR burning, etc. Icefall is mandatory in frost builds. Elemental Summoner has some play because of the reduced Conjuration cooldown. It's got some attack speed on it, some non-fizz damage, and some mana. It's super nice. And then Enchantment Master may find its way into some builds. Say you're running Iceblade Enchantment and Familiar Enchantment for that 20% enchantment buff and the non-fizz and all resist that it has. So here is the new Familiar skill. As I was saying, it's got 3 charges, cooldown of 12 seconds. The enchantment's super nice. You don't even need to have it on the bar. If you're just casting Ice Blades a ton, you can get it. And then the summon familiar is really awesome because it makes the elements rotate, so you can get that burning damage or chill for freeze or even some stun. You can get a lot of crowd control out of it, and because you can have 6 extra at one time, that's going to be 6 extra conj mastery stacks, which is really important on a lot of builds. Such a fireball build, or even chain lightning that that can usually only get 20 conjurations max or something like that. So it's pretty nice. We have a new key passive. I think it's amazing. So casting any skill grants 1 stack of Enlightenment, or grants 3 when you cast a different elemental skill as your previous one. In the patch notes, this says 15. And then after gaining 100 stacks, you become enlightened and you lose 10 stacks, and you lose 5 stacks per second. The patch notes say 10. I'm unsure if while you are losing stacks, you can keep granting them up, or if you get it and then it just lasts for 10 seconds and then you have to restack it up. But I think it'll just restack itself as long as you're playing and casting. While enlightened, you gain 25% damage, 45% mana regen, and 20% attack speed. You can honestly put this on any build, and it's going to be great. We now have some cross element build stuff, so that's really amazing. We already went over the legendary node and the new fundamental release. Energy focus. It's a new way to generate some barrier. It's okay. Dampen layer. It's basically a reinforced glyph. You gain 2% DR while you have a barrier. That'll be 6% with 3 ranks. This will be 3% with 3 ranks. Basically, your skills deal 3% increased damage for each skill you have equipped to that type on your skill bar. So Ice Blades, Frost Nova, Ice Blades, Ice Armor, and Frozen Orb on the bar, and you'll get 9% more damage out. And then we got now we have plus 10 skill points, and we got this one looks amazing. Gain 12% CDR per 3 ranks of cooldown reduction. That's crazy. New items. These look a little niche, but I think they could be really good on a Hydra build. We'll see if they make their way, if they're worthy of making their way into any other build. Got non-fizz, familiar explosion size. It'll apply burning better. Familiar hits twice and ranks the familiar. And now casting familiar now summons all 3 elemental variants at once. Its duration's increased by 50%. So 8 to 12, now it's 12 seconds. Its cooldown is reduced by 2, so now it's 10 seconds instead of 12. But it doesn't get 3 charges anymore, it just gets 2. We'll see. But this will be an easy way to get 6 familiars out, like just by casting it twice. We got a little incinerate aspect. Now channeling incinerate, it deals fire damage, looks like critical strike fire damage per second for 5 seconds. That's kind of cool. Charge flash looks really good for charge bolts. Hit a bunch of enemies with charge bolts. Your next 3 casts become waves that pierce and deal yada 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 critical shock damage. That's great. And then this one's pretty cool. Casting Fire, Shock, or Frost skills conjure an elemental dagger that pierces through enemies, dealing yada 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 damage after 3 seconds. Basically, in that 3-second window, it seems like the damage is increased by 100% per matching elemental skill you cast. So we'll see how many we'll see how many daggers you can get out. If it's just one dagger at a time, it's not that amazing. But if like you can make a bunch of daggers and they're just ripping, it's going to be really amazing. Considering we can get our attack speed down to like 15 or 20 frames a second, which is 3 to 4 attacks per second. And that'll really ramp up the damage there. The new Mythic Unique, Shroud of False Death. This one doesn't look interesting to me. There's also new Polearm, not shown in here, but that's not for us. You gain stealth and some movement speed if you haven't attacked. All right, cool. Next, but this is the Air of Perdition. It's plus 200% damage to angels and demons. It makes it sound like angels are coming. 20% crit chance, lucky hit, 20% movement speed, and plus 3 to core skills if it's greater or fixed. Basically, it's a 60% damage buff. And if other players are also wearing the helmet, you can potentially steal the Lilith favor from them, which is this 60% damage buff. And then you can get yourself, if all 3 of the other players with you, you can get a 240% damage buff. So this is going to be really awesome. You could probably do some crazy setups with this, with like maybe some guy with like a really big one-hit bang skill. You can like, I don't know. That's really cool. But another big thing, the biggest thing that's actually coming is runes. So runes can be equipped on your helmet, which now has 2 gem slots, your chest, which has 2, your pants, or a 2-handed staff, which all have 2 gem slots. They replace the gems that would initially go there. We'll see how that affects our max life and intelligence. But so you combine a ritual and an invocation glyph. The ritual is what you use to generate offering, and then the invocation spends the offering to do something. So right here, this is a ritual one. Cast a skill with a cooldown that generates offering. It's just not shown here. You can combine the magic runes and it'll make a legendary one, and they're stronger. But as you can see here, let's see, cast a skill with a cooldown, gain some crit strike chance for 5 seconds up to 25%. So I'm just going to go over some of these. You can read them. These are some of the ones that I liked that I thought were cool. But this one right here, gain 25 offering, cast a non-channeled core skills. That would be spam every time you spam fireball, 25 offering. And then I think this one's cool. Evoke the Barbarian's Enhanced Warcry after you generate 500 offering. Increases your movement speed and damage dealt. Or then there's cool ones like cast a skill with a cooldown, gain 50 offering, and then on like a meteor build, you're spamming your cooldown so often. Evoke the Sorcerer's Meteorites, so it'll spawn a bunch of meteorites. That's really cool. You can spend resource, gain resource, reduce your cooldowns, and then we even have this cool little pull that can sort of act as a pseudo raiment. Tempering is less cancerous. There's now going to be a temper reset scroll that you can get from the Citadel activity. I believe it's limited. I think you can only use it once per item. And options on all temper manuals have been reduced to about 3 or 4 per temper manual. Sorry, having a bit of an allergy attack. But there's a new temper manual, basic core and alt damage. And alt damage has been removed from Worldly Finesse, and now it's just crit, vul, and overpower. And the biggest takeaway here, you can read some of these, but it's stuff like here, like chance for Ice Spike to do double damage, chance for Firewall to deal double damage, Incinerate, Meteor to deal double damage. They've moved all these size tempers onto utility because they are not damage. Tal Rasha got a bit of a change. Typically, we saw 60% damage on Tal Rasha, and stuff like Firebolt enchantment would proc it because it was just dealing damage. Upper end was 80%. It's now going to be 75% like optimally, and it's cool because you no longer have to worry about poison or shadow. You don't feel like you're missing out, but it's casting a Pyro, Shock, or Frost skill, increases damage by 25%, 5 seconds, stacks once per element. Casting again refreshes all the bonuses, but it has to be a different skill than the element that you just casted, but that shouldn't be too big of an issue because like say your main skill is, say you're on a Frozen Orb build and your main skill is Frozen Orb, you casted Flame Shield, you casted Lightning Spear, and you casted Frozen Orb, and now you're just hammering away on Frozen Orb and you're at 75%. You have 5 seconds to cast either a Lightning Spear, a Teleport, or a Flame Shield again to keep refreshing the bonus. So Sorcerer has such good cooldowns, it should be totally fine. I think this is a buff to it. It was a bit annoying trying to get the 80% damage before, and now you can't just get it for free. You can't just use Firebolt enchantment and just get the, the extra 25%. You're gonna have to run Flame Shield, man. Enchantment changes, really nothing. Chain Lightning enchantment got reduced from 4 to 1 second. Sort of irrelevant because the Chain Lightning enchantment still won't factor into Axial Conduit's Chain Lightning count. Hydra enchantment, the duration was increased. Hydra enchantment still isn't that good. It doesn't really let you go over the Hydra cap of 2 or 3, depending if you have Serpentine. Arclash enchantment, longer stun, that's still dead. Incinerate enchantment is actually okay. Cooldown reduced from 14 to 8 seconds, and I think it lasts 8 seconds, so it should always be active. So it could be something to run with Incinerate, but I really think, like, this season it was Firebolt and Iceblade enchantment. I think in season 6 it's going to be Iceblade enchantment and Familiar enchantment, and then you won't even need Familiar on the bar. It's just as you're getting 6 Iceblades out, you keep it keeps reducing Iceblade's cooldown by a ton. You keep spam casting Iceblades, and then every 4 Iceblades that you cast will summon a Familiar. And then if you take that summon Familiar node, it'll rotate and it'll give you your burning. It'll provide burning for you for free, and it'll also scale up your number of conjurations for more damage, mana regen, and movement speed. There's some damage changes. I'll go over these briefly. So Endless Pyre is a passive in the ultimate damage section. It basically used to be you would stack up damage on burning enemies the longer they were burning. Now it's just you get more burning damage and you deal a bunch more damage if they're taking a ton of burning damage. That's like more life than they have left. And then Engulfing Flames is now basically they sort of swapped Endless Pyre and Engulfing Flames, which I think is pretty nice. So basically now this will stack up to 30% burning damage, and then if they're below half life, you deal an additional 30% more. But the biggest damage change was the Conj Mastery cap, which is honestly, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Unless you're like a diehard Lightning Spear staff user, then yeah, look for a new fucking build. But it's gonna be fine. No build besides Lightning Spear has typically ever gotten more than 30 conjurations regularly. Even Frozen Orb this season will usually cap around 30, and like randomly it will see 35, 36 if your gear's really good. So this doesn't affect any fucking build, really. And you can still get more than 30 conjurations. It's just the damage bonus is capped at 30, and I think they were super generous with 30. Not super generous, but this was like the perfect fucking number they could have picked. I'll go over how it affects Lightning Spear, the pure Lightning Spear build. Sorry, I can't see because of my cat. But we're going to go into Storm Swell. It used to be 30% damage with vulnerable enemies when you have a barrier. Now it's 35% damage when you have an active ice armor. It's increased by another 15% against frozen enemies. And what do you know? Storm Swell's bugged this season to deal more damage when you have an ice armor active. And you get even more damage when they're frozen enemies. It's almost like they put this in the game files a little bit too early, and it fucked up Storm Swell. In a good way. Crazy. So now enhanced charge bolts, it's this lightning surge. It's now going to actually hit the original target. That's going to help charge bolts single target damage. Destructive fireball used to be 20% plus additive crit strike damage. Now it's going to be X. Apparently that was a bug. Okay, even though it said plus. Now 30% when hitting 3 enemies, so that's a 20 to 30% buff just to fireball off the rip. And now fireball enchantment. Fireball itself will not have to run firebolt enchantment anymore, which was always stupid. But the enhanced node, which is always taken because it's the second one, it's casting fireball, increases its radius by 50%, and it applies a burn for like 6 seconds. So that's awesome. And then the biggest winners are everyone but pure Lightning Spear. Frozen Orb is typically capped around 30 conjurations. No change, won't affect it at all, even if you run it with Splintering in a hybrid. But pure Lightning Spear in the pit. Ayaskelta, who's pushed 150 plus, he'd push higher, but no GA Shaco, so he's been shit out of luck. So he gets 50 to 64 out when mobbing, and it's like 35 to 55 on bosses, depending on how much he moves. So I did some math. At 60 stacks, that's assuming 8 ranks to Conj Mastery, because they triple crit the the Frozen Orb Explosion reduces the Conj cooldown instead of Conj Mastery. So, 5 ranks from the amulet, 3 from the skill tree. I did some math at what it is now. So you're going to be dealing 58% of the damage you did before when you were mobbing. There still could be more changes to the splintering. And then bossing, let's average it out to 45 stacks because he said 35 to 55. I'll do all that math again at 8 ranks to conj mastery, and that's 73% of the damage you previously dealt. So it got hit a little bit, and that's all I have, folks. I'm really excited for season 6. I think Frozen Orb is really going to be the premier build, and I think that's really what you should start. That's what you should work towards building because it's like our second best build right now, barring pit boss cheeses where you find a boss with a bunch of ads and you like shatter them. But I don't think that's like realistic for like how awesome the game's going to be as a whole due to all the torment changes, like scaling all the different activities now, nightmare dungeons and everything. I don't see firebolt. Just it's still sort of like a meme pit push build. I think spear isn't going to be worth building because of how high the CDR recs are to get it to feel good. And I think just running Frozen Orb either as pure or as like with splintering on like say a pair of gloves or something, I think it's just going to be the play. Like if you're looking for the build that you should make for now, for what we know now, like to go into the raid with and like to start pushing all this stuff with is just get yourself a winter glass and build Frozen Orb because it gets online so much better and it can just ramp and it's not nerfed in any way, shape, or form by the conj mastery limit now at 30. So I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be great. I'm looking forward most to Frozen Orb. I want to see what kind of juice Fireballs got in it with some of the buffs that it got, and I'm excited for Charged Bolts again, Hydra, and also Meteor. I want to see if we can make something really cool happen with Meteor and some of the new Meteorites runes and stuff like that, and then Hydra with the familiars. I think it's going to be super fun. I'm going to cook up some super fucking awesome stuff for season 6 Festival of Hatred. I'm going to neglect my health and my well-being to cook up the most fun and the best feeling builds because I'm a field crafter. Might get into a little bit of spreadsheeting, but most of my stuff is field craft. I want them to feel good, tanky, strong, good in everything. Mana's good. Maybe it's 2 tiers below the top damage build, but like it's still a blaster and it's still amazing, and that's what I do. And I'm gonna fucking cook. Call me Walter White, baby. I'm cooking. All right, peace.